Absolutely. Thanks for having us. We always appreciate the Newnan Carnegie Library for hosting us. And I'm super excited about this program today just because one of the most daunting things for me as a writer has always been how to reach potential publishers, agents. It just feels overwhelming. I can write the entire book, but to sit down and write a letter and promote myself in that way, I'm not very confident in that. And I think a lot of writers feel that way. So I'm hoping that Susan can help us through that minefield and give us some tips and tricks that will make us more marketable to agents and publishers out there. So Susan, thank you for being here. And would you like to tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, my writing background, I've always written. It was just my therapy or whatever, you know, it just, even as a child, I don't like you, so I'm just going to go to my room and I'll just write about it. And at some point, I started writing longer and longer pieces. And when my children, I was always writing. I mean, I just, even if it was in the bathroom with, at one point we lived in an apartment, the bathroom was the only room with a lock on the door. So I would sit on the toilet seat and with the kids banging on the door. But I always wrote, but I never really did anything with my writing. And when I did, I might send a manuscript, and back then you mailed the manuscript. And if whoever I was sending it to said, well, this isn't quite right for us, I'd say, okay. And then I'd write another book because I didn't know how this stuff worked at all. And when my children left home, I joined a few groups. I joined a critique group and then the Atlanta Writers Club. And I realized, oh my God, this is so subjective. These agents are so subjective, what they like. Just because one person doesn't like what you're writing doesn't mean the next person won't love it. And so I learned a lot there and started going to meet with agents when they were here and available. The Pocket Wife, I had one agent that I met at Atlanta Writers Club conference, actually. And she was great. She was really nice. And we had great conversations, but she wasn't, she wanted to go into a different kind of publishing. She wanted to do online publishing, and I really wanted to do traditional, so we parted ways. I wrote The Pocket Wife. I usually write or wrote literary fiction, and my critique group, I'm in a critique group, and I would strongly suggest critique groups, even if they're online, even if it's just one other person and you, it really does help. For one thing, it makes you thicker skinned. And so when you deal with the agents, you're prepared. And also it's good to bounce your ideas off other people or another like-minded person. But I had at one point no like-minded people in my critique group. It was me and a bunch of men, and no offense to the men, but they liked action. And I was writing about women talking and drinking tea. And you know. So the leader, sort of self-appointed leader, said, well, why don't you ever put any action in your books? And I said, okay, the next thing I write is going to start out with a dead body. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I read the Nancy Drew books, but that was about it. I did not read in that genre. I certainly didn't write in that genre, but I found it was really fun. And of course, the people in my critique group loved it. And I finished the book, the first draft, in about 6 months. That was The Pocket Wife. I went to an AWC conference, Atlanta Writers Club conference, and I turned in my 20 pages to an agent with the query letter and a synopsis. She loved it. She said, it was Jenny Bent. And she said, send me the whole thing right now. I did. She decided she didn't love it anymore. And she wanted me to rewrite the book from the points of view of two characters, mostly the bipolar woman who is having a bipolar episode and doesn't know if she's killed her neighbor because they had drunk way too much. And then the next thing she knows, the neighbor turned up dead. So I did. It wasn't as difficult as I thought, but I did. She said, I can't rep this. There are too many points of view. So instead of just letting, and this isn't just about me, this is, I'm hoping some of this will be helpful to you. Instead of just saying, oh, she didn't like it, that's too bad. I said, well, could we talk about what it was? Oh, I think she said, if you're willing to put this into 2 points of view and nobody else is interested in the book the way it is, feel free to come back to me then. But I didn't know if she was just saying that like, let's do lunch, or if she was serious. So I just did what you're not supposed to do. And I said, well, could we talk about this on the phone? Because I don't want to go to do all this work if I'm not sure what you're getting at. So we did talk. I did rewrite. She again said, well, it needs more. But after rewriting and mostly waiting for her to get back to me, because she had so many other clients, she took it. She had an offer on it within 12 hours, a HarperCollins editor. And I was so terrified. My little ESL jobs, and I never made any money to speak of. And I said, well, I'm not ready to make, it was a 6-figure offer. And I said, well, I'm just not, and she said, well, we could go to auction. And I said, yeah, let's do that. And she said, are you sure? Because you could lose this offer. And I'm like, no, I'm sure. Of course, my husband was, you did what? But then it went to auction, and there were, I think, seven entrants. So they were all bidding on the book. It became then a 2-book deal, and the amount of money like tripled. And there you are. I went from point A, or maybe point B, because I'd won a couple of contests for poetry. So point B to point X, just in no time at all. And so I missed there were a lot of things I wish I had known then that I didn't. I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes, but it was really, it was quite a journey. It was really fun. And I'm happy to answer any questions I can on any subject you want, but I was asked to do, and it sold all over the world. It was a bestseller in 2 countries, I think. And then The Other Widow was the 2nd book. So.
Is that not out yet? The Other Widow?
Yeah, that came out the next year. In fact, it was
okay.
due the same week The Pocket Wife came out. The other one was due, and I hadn't really written. I mean, it was the book that the guy was complaining about, that people were just walking around talking about having affairs and drinking tea. So I had to completely take it apart and reconstruct it as a thriller.
A thriller.
Yeah. Well, my books are, they're called
psychological thrillers.
Like literary psychological thrillers, which means we don't know what the hell this is. But they're not very thrilling. I mean, there was a head bashing, but there's not. I'm not into gore, so.
Well, that's what I like about the psychological thriller genre, is because it's all inside your head. It's all that manipulation inside the mind, and that's always a lot of fun. But I am curious about the query letter that you included with your 20 pages.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
That made a statement, and I'd like to know, because that's the part that I'm always flabbergasted by, is what I need to say in that query letter.
Okay, well, I don't I don't have that one handy.
Well, any of them are fine. We just want to, that's what I want to know. I want to
What I'm
learn.
going to do is share screen here, and I'm going to
Okay.
just, here's some tips. Because I'm not sure that I am, well, to be quite honest, sometimes I'll listen to someone speaking on how to write a query letter, and I'm amazed at how many things I did wrong. and again, remember, it's your book. You want, this is, well, first of all, I think the topic of this talk is how to overcome your fears. But remember, if you never apply for a job, you're not going to get one. And this is sort of the same thing. You're putting what you have to offer out there. And some people will want it, some people might not. It's a matter of, it's a very subjective business. For example, if you write a book about a torrid affair and the agent, and they're people too, believe it or not, sometimes it's hard to realize that. But if you're sending it to an agent whose husband has just had a torrid affair with his secretary or his administrative assistant, she's not going to want your book. I mean, that has nothing to do with your book, your topic, your plot, or the way you wrote it. It might just be a completely, it's ringing the wrong bells for that agent. So keep that in mind. The next one might say, oh, I just absolutely love this.
So I think what that comes to speak to is hit lots of agents. Don't give up on the first one. Like, make sure that you send it out.
No, I mean, so many famous writers talk about how their writing rooms are papered with rejection letters. And I could do that, but it's too depressing. I don't want to see them. But yeah, I've gotten lots and lots and lots of rejections. In fact, right now I'm looking for an agent and had to brush up my query. But anyway, here are a few things. Just at the get-go, a few rules. Keep it short. One single space page should do it. What you want to do is you just kind of want to whet the appetite of the agent. You don't want to go on for 3 pages unless they ask for a synopsis. Don't ever tell the ending. Do say your genre. If you don't know what it is, just put a slash. Like my book is a suspense / thriller / women's read. You know, you don't have to, that's not your job. They just need to know ballpark what they're about to read, but you don't have to be absolute. They're not grading you on how precise you are with the genre. They just want to know where it would fit in a bookstore. Also, certain agents have ins with certain editors. So you might send an historical fiction book to an agent who doesn't know any editors who really handle historical fiction. She might pass it on to somebody else in her organization, or she might just say, this is not a good fit for me. And when they say that, it sounds like a slap in the face, but a lot of times it's true. It just isn't a good fit for her. If she doesn't have contacts in that genre, she might not know what exactly to do with your piece. So tell your genre, include the word count. And again, that doesn't have to be down to the word, but you know, is it 80,000 words? Is it 95,000 words? Put as close as you can. Include a couple of comps. Do you know what I mean by that? Just a couple of books that are similar to your book in some way. Now, it could be the writing style. It could be the plot. It could be some of the characters. It could be the subject you're writing on. So it doesn't have to be identical. Nobody really wants that anyway. But if you could say, well, my book has a smattering of Desperation Row by so-and-so and a little bit of, well, down here, I cover that. So it could be maybe the writing style of so-and-so, the subject matter of somebody else. But if you could put in a couple of comparison books, it's helpful. And if you can't think of any, maybe you could Google it, what books deal with whatever your topic is. Or if you've seen a movie, you can even do that. You can even use a movie as a comp. But and if you don't have any, you don't have any. I didn't with The Pocket Wife. And at that point, I didn't know you were supposed to put in comps, but they do like it if you can say it's a little bit, it's got a smattering of this and that. If you're going to do that, use books or movies, preferably books that have been published in the last few years. And don't pick something like Gone with the Wind or Harry Potter or something that's too popular.
Right.
Then they'll think you're full of yourself or something. This I don't know firsthand. This is what I've learned from conferences and things. Okay, starting off, you're making an initial connection here. Now, here are a couple ways you could do it. Number one, after watching the video on your favorite types of submissions, and a lot of these agents do have online videos where they talk about what they're looking for. It can be helpful. Snoop, see what you can find out about them and their preferences. I'm hoping you might be interested in my literary fiction / upmarket fiction novel. At 90,000 words, Take Two is a cross between Leon Moriarty's Apples Never Fall and Anne Patchett's The Dutch House. In it, and then you go on and tell a little bit about your book.
Very good.
Another way, it's great if you happen to know one of the agent's clients that could introduce you or introduce you by a phone call or just tell that agent that you're going to get in touch with them. But that's, doesn't happen too often. Or you could say, I love Rep Me by whoever, as well as Being Picked by whoever. And because my novel, Discovering Nancy, is similar to both, I'm hoping you might be interested in taking a look, and then you say a little bit about your book. Or possibly we met at the November AWC conference, or we met at a conference in Chattanooga or Illinois, or just remind them. So these are ways that you can initially establish that you know something about them and that you're reaching out to them specifically. It's not just a mass email. Now, these are some exaggerations of how not to make initial contact. Number one, since I see from Instagram that we both have Dobermans and even frequent the same bar down on 16th Street, don't. That's a little too up close and personal. Or my friend was at a cocktail party where her partner works and she met someone whose mother was once represented by someone at your agency. So I thought, wow, this is meant to be. No, a little too vague. Or since you agented Where the Crawdads Sing and it was so well received, I know my book will be an immediate New York Times bestseller since it's practically identical. No, that's overstepping. But so these are ways not to do it. They're exaggerations, but you get the idea. Or you could try, a lot of people say, a lot of agents say, just get right into the hook. I don't care where you found me, just get into the hook. Okay, number one, after drinking too much at a strange bar, a young accountant falls asleep and awakens the next day in a spider's body. Number two, a woman distraught about her disintegrating marriage pops into a liquor store on her way home from work. When she returns to her car, her first love is sitting in the back seat with a sack of bills from a downtown bank. Or blend so then she's, then what happens? Or blend the personal connection with jumping into your book. Since you represent Franz Kafka, I'm hoping my novel might interest you. Bug Me Not is about a man who goes to bed one night and wakes up in a spider's body. So that way you're kind of pulling into the plot, but you're making a connection to it. Obviously, I'm being funny here with the Franz Kafka, but you get the idea. Yeah. Describe your book. Okay. I've heard different things about this too. You want to tease, you want to whet the appetite of the agent. So you want a little tease. You want to give the setup and show what the main character wants or needs and what stands in the way of attaining it, if you can do that. Okay, for the pocket wife, I could say something like, a woman on the verge of a manic episode drinks too much with her neighbor, goes home, passes out on her couch, and awakens to an ambulance. 2 hours later, the neighbor has been murdered. Did she do it? And all is pointing to her. That's the hook. And that's the first part of the book. And really, that's all you need to do in some cases. Now, okay, so here's a couple of examples. After a couple has a huge argument in front of 6 couples at a neighborhood block party, the wife stalks off for home. When she has arrived after 2 hours, her husband feels he should call the police, but he hesitates, knowing spouses make the best suspects in the case of foul play, and that he has a criminal record he's thus far managed to keep hidden. So right away, we see the setup, we see the conflict, and that he wants to find his wife, but he doesn't, you know, if he calls the police, he might be arrested, he might be a suspect. Or number 2, 3 small pigs are determined to renovate houses in a neighborhood in Indianapolis, but a large wolf threatens to blow them all to bits if they do. 3 little pigs. So they have something they want to do, but the obstacle is the wolf. If they do this, then this will happen. So there's a conflict. Now, some people prefer to develop the story more, and some agents like that. Unfortunately, you don't know which ones like which. But if you want to, and I generally do this, I'm doing this now on the book that I'm writing, which I could show you if you like at some point, if I can find it. Because I have 2 point of view characters. So I wanted to cover both of them. So I had a little more development. But okay, number 1, continuing the first example. The husband must find his missing wife before the police come looking for him. At the same time, his wife is determined to remain missing until she can figure out a way to replace or not replace the money she stole from her job, even if it means throwing her husband under the bus. The second example, with the 3 little pigs, on Indy Avenue, house prices have fallen drastically. Pokey intends to build his house of straw and hold fundraisers with the Tahitian theme. So, you know, little bit more development. But whether you're including only the setup or more, which is fine, just keep the description brief. Remember, you want to whet the agent's appetite. You don't want to discuss the entire book because that'll go on for far too long, and they seem to have very short attention spans. So you want to hook them right away. And don't ever give away the ending in a query, because they're readers too. You know, they want to read through the book. And now, if they ask for a synopsis, then you can give away the ending. But generally, I have found, I've done synopses for conferences, but I have found, I don't think I've ever run across an agent who actually asked for a synopsis. Maybe once, which is good because I'm not good at doing synopses, but if they don't ask for a synopsis, don't go through the whole story. Keep it to 1 page, single space, I think is about right. Okay, now about you. Oh, feel free to jump in and ask me any questions you want, or tell me to move it along, or however.
You're doing great. So I do have a quick question, Susan, if I can.
Sure.
So the way you've broken down this document is you're basically giving us the outline of the letter, right? So
Yes.
it should really go in this sequencing, right?
Well, yes, you should go in this sequencing.
Okay.
You
So
wanna,
about you comes after your,
yeah, it
what to
all goes
listen.
in the order I
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Very
So
good.
about you, mention any publications. Okay. Now, when I first started this, I didn't have any publications, except when I was in high school, I had a poem put in it was called The Spectrum. It was in Miami, and it was 1,000,000 years ago. But nobody knows that. So I just said I had a poem published in the Spectrum Literary Magazine. It was true. I mean, it's not a nationally known periodical, but so what? I mean, it just, anything you've done, if you want a contest for a short story, put it in there. And I started entering Atlanta Writers Club contests, and I won a few in short stories and poetry. So then I could add that. So anything that indicates somebody has looked at your stuff and liked it is always helpful. If you don't have any credits, you say something like, I'm a member of Hometown Novel Nights, or I attend the Newnan Carnegie Library events, and just anything to show that you're connected in some way with writing. I'm a member of the Atlanta Writers Club. I'm a member of Georgia Writers Club. Anything like that. Sisters in Crime. Or if you're not, are you in a critique group? Do you have one friend with whom you exchange writings? Anything like that, just make it sound maybe a little more exciting than it is. You're a writer, you're creative, make it sound important and put that in. If there's absolutely nothing, then of course, don't tell them you're up for the Pulitzer Prize. Don't just pull something out of the air, but make the most of what you have in your background. Okay, if there's something that makes you particularly qualified to write this particular book, you might mention it. Here's the example on the one about the husband and the wife. I once walked away from a block party and lived for several years in France on the money I stole from my job. Sadly, my husband couldn't join me as he was jailed for my murder. Now, that would make you very qualified to write this particular book. Or on a serious note, my son was in one of the Twin Towers on 9/11 and just barely made it out. My book takes place there, or my book deals with the loss of innocence, or something. If there's something in your life that you feel is important, or or I lost my mother recently, so I'm writing this mother-daughter novel on resolving issues before it's too late. Something like that, it is relevant, and I would put it in. If there is no connection to your writing journey or the book, it isn't necessary to mention personal tidbits. The agent doesn't need to know you garden, for example, unless your book deals with gardening, or that you lived communally in Iowa unless you're writing a book about commutes. So, which I didn't know. I used to go on about my children and my jobs, and I don't think it hurts to. I still say I taught adult literacy for 20 years, or that doesn't hurt, but don't get off on a tangent about knitting or something, unless the book is about knitting. In closing, which is the last thing, keep it simple. I hope to hear back from you, or I'm looking forward to hearing back from you, or if it's a conference, you're about to meet at a conference, I'm looking forward to meeting you in Atlanta in November. If you've already met the agent and she's invited you to query her or to send pages, make sure to type that. I mean, because they get a bunch. They might get 150 in one day. So you want what you're sending to stand out right in capital letters, type requested material in the subject line, and then a little dash, the name of the conference if you meant a conference, or Gloria's hot tub party if you meant there. Whatever it is, you want it to stand out. And you want requested material to definitely be there, because then they know they want it. You get out past the slush pile pretty quickly. And that's about all I've got on.
Well, can I ask you a question about going up here to where we talk about the agent's wish list? One of the things that I find a little overwhelming is even locating agents, because there are so many different lists out there of agents and what they're interested in, that it's a little overwhelming to cull through that and actually determine who might be a good fit. Are there like any better resources that can help us sort of migrate through that process? Because I've sent letters to agents who I've never heard back from. I've sent letters to agents who have informed me that they're no longer doing that work. You know, I mean, it's like I can't ever seem to come up with a good, valid list of agents who are actually interested in seeing unsolicited manuscripts or requests from indie type writers like us. Do you have any kind of resource for that?
Well, I used to religiously every year go to Barnes and Nobles or Borders when it was open, and get a book called The Writer's Digest Guide to Agents.
Okay.
Every year. And I'd love it because I could mark things, I could highlight people, and then I could go back and I could underline where they say, I'm particularly interested in people who are writing about trips taken with family, things like that. Mm-hmm. However, now everything's online, and a lot of those agents in those books are no longer agents. And I'll tell you, this is a really rough time for a lot of people to get
in the publishing industry throughout, because it's doing this magnificent shift.
It's right? A huge shift. What they're looking for now has shifted totally, and they're fine with people like Leanne Moriarty, the big names, because they make the money that if they're taking chances on people they're not sure about, that'll make up for it. But there are also a lot of, or at least this is just my opinion. They're not calling me. Publishers are not calling me and shooting the breeze about this sort of thing, but I'm guessing that because a lot of them will be closed, except to, if you're trans or you're from Ethiopia, or they will say that right up front.
Yep.
My former agent is close to all but BIPOC authors at this point. So there's that. There's also the fact that a lot of people have stopped being agents at this point because of the pandemic. I mean, they're no longer feeling safe in New York. They moved out here. They've lost touch with it. I mean, it's just everything. The whole country is
in flux.
And so is the publishing world. That said, people are reading probably more than ever. So keep submitting, because when people are stuck at home or not working or flipping out, they're gonna read, or at least I would be. So I think that it's what is it? Best of times, it was the worst of times. It's difficult.
The dichotomy.
Yeah, but people do want books. Okay, back to your question. If I were, what I do is I might Google the best agents for whatever my genre is.
Right. Psychological thriller, women's fiction, murder mystery, whatever. Yeah.
We don't know what it is. Yeah. And then I would get a list. I also joined Query Tracker, which is free, which I don't use a whole lot, but I also joined, but it's good. And then you can look up any agent. They usually tell you, you'll see comments from people who've queried that agent, how long it takes to get back to them, if they're nice, if they're helpful with their feedback, that sort of thing.
And is that a free service, that Query Tracker?
It is. I think
Okay.
if you want to get a little more, you can pay. And then I think it's a higher tier of information maybe.
Okay.
But the last I checked, basic Query Tracker was free. I joined.
Yes, yes, it continues to be free, and yeah, and you'll find some other things. Susan, you're doing a great job. I've been thrown off the video part. Here I'm outside of Albany, actually on the road. But real quick question to maybe when you get a chance is to talk about the value of pitching at like the Atlanta Writers Conference with
Right.
George Weinstein's programs, and how you approach that as well, because there's where you're going to meet your agents and your editors, and you should be able to preview what they're looking for on those events. So I'm going to leave it with that question there, and I think you've got some experience in that.
I do. That's where I got both of my agents. Well, yeah, two of my agents, and I do have a little bit about pitching that I haven't quite
Yes.
gotten to yet.
We'll head to that next.
But,
Excellent, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Good to hear you, if not see you. Hi. I joined Publishers Marketplace. Now, I think that's the best. You can look up all different things. You can look up, now I'm paying for it. It's $25 a month, which is steep. But if you want to do it just for maybe 3 months until you find an agent or find a list of agents, or 1 month, you can stop it. I think you can just stop anytime you want. But man, they've got everything. What is it? Publisher's Lunch. They tell you everything that was published that day and by whom. And you can see the latest deals. I remember Publishers Lunch. And also you can look, what I like is you can look up individual agents, or you can say, what is it, the top agents, I can't remember how they worded it, but anyway, you can go to the top agents and you can see maybe the top 100 agents, and then you can narrow it down. You can look up something on that particular agent, see what she covers or he covers, and how much they got for the, maybe somebody's published or sold 10 books in the last month, but if they're all to publisher, if they didn't make any money, it might not be as important to you as somebody who sold 1 book in the last 6 months, but it was a $500,000 deal. You can find all this stuff out by joining Publishers Marketplace. I know I sound like an ad for it, but it's been really helpful to me. And as Mike said, yes, in not just the Atlanta Writers Club, there are conferences all over the country all the time. And now a lot of them are on Zoom. I presume they will continue with that option. And for the Atlanta Writers Club, for example, they'll say maybe 6 months ahead of time or 5 months ahead of time. Usually they start right after the one ends. They'll be advertising for the next one. And you barely had time to lick your wounds before you're ready to go back and get beaten up again. But they'll have a list of agents and sometimes editors, and the picture, the bio, and what they're looking for explicitly. So that is another way. And that's how I met Jenny Bent. You send in 20 pages, and I think this is pretty standard. I've been to a couple other conferences, other places. Seems to be standard. And they'll read it. You send it in about a month ahead of meeting them. They'll read that and your synopsis and your query letter. And then you get 10 minutes to meet with them. You have to pay, and that keeps changing the amount of money. So I can't tell you exactly what it is. I think it was $150 or $70. But you're in a room alone with this agent, and they'll ask you questions. They give you back your written up manuscript, and you can ask them questions, and they might say, I'd like to see the first 50 pages. I'd like to see the first 100 pages. They might say, this isn't for me. Why don't you change this and this? And, if you just, and they usually will say, well, I'd like to see this at the beginning, and, or you should just cut out the first 2 paragraphs and start here. So it's very helpful if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's very helpful even if they don't take your manuscript. And to what Mike just said, it is great, but it's not necessary. Now, Jenny Bent did an interview in which she said she met me at a conference, but that it was an anomaly. She said she is much more likely to sign somebody on through the slush pile than through meeting them at a conference. So if you go to a conference and you think everything's going great, but you don't get picked up, you're not alone. I mean, it's very competitive. These conferences are very competitive, and just getting noticed is very competitive too. So write the best book you can. Have a few people read it, whether you're in a critique group or what they call beta readers. And when it comes to that, I like to just send it to friends who are not themselves writers, because if they're writers, they're going, oh, wait, if she flipped that sentence around, but just people who read books, and they'll tell you, well, I lost interest around page 50, or don't pick your best friend, and God, don't pick a spouse, because they're not going to be honest. Maybe they're probably going to sugarcoat things, but somebody that reads a lot and will tell you the truth, and then you take it with a grain of salt. You don't want to change your whole book around because of one person's opinion, and that goes for agents too. If you send your book to 4 agents and all of them give you feedback, and one of them says, well, I think you should rewrite the whole thing because I think you don't necessarily do it. And the same in a critique group. If 3 people tell you you're off base with something, then you want to look at it again. If one person says you're off base with something and 5 others think it's great, I would suggest you take it very lightly with a grain of salt. But yeah, Publishers Marketplace, or just, you could try just Googling the top agents in literary fiction, or agents who like to represent literary fiction. And then you look them up. Usually they have little bios or things about themselves and their agency, and see which one you kind of feel good about and send to them.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I think that's a really important point that you just made about accepting feedback, but not necessarily taking all that feedback. Just because one person doesn't like the way you've done something doesn't mean that it has to be changed. So I do content editing for a publisher out of North Carolina. And one of the things that I always tell my authors is that reading is subjective. So if there's something that I have presented that I think they need to change, but they feel strongly that it needs to stay, then they should go with their gut instinct, because ultimately this is their book. And I've given them plenty to work with But that doesn't mean that everything I said you have to follow my rules all the way through, because reading is subjective. And I mean, my best friend doesn't enjoy reading my books because she says that it makes her feel claustrophobic because I write first person, immediate tense. So it's like happening right now and you can't get out of my character's head. And that stresses my friend out. And so she doesn't enjoy my writing. So I've actually written the next 2 books are third person. I'm trying to give her something to taste of mine that she might enjoy. Now, if she comes back and says she doesn't like any of that, I'm just going to be done. And she's just going to have to read other people's stuff and I'm not going to worry about her. But it is interesting because reading is so subjective. And she loves my storylines and she loves the ideas. She just can't handle the way I write them. I make her feel crazy. So,
but she would not like The Pocket Wife.
see? And I will totally love The Pocket Wife. Actually, I've downloaded it now. I'm going to read it.
Oh, good. Let me know what you think.
Well, I wish that I'd found it before and I would have told you what I think already. So, but yes. So let's go on and we'll talk a little bit about pitches, because that's really where we get into that a lot of times at conferences where we're actually meeting people in person. And we have that opportunity to do, you talk about elevator pitches. So I'm going to just let you take over your pitches here. And let's talk a little bit about that.
My bit on pitches is very, very small because, to be quite honest, I am terrible at giving pitches. I can't seem to just stick to the point. So I'm not going to lie to you.
That's the key. That's the key.
But I know how they're supposed to be done. Well,
let's talk about how it's supposed to be done.
Okay. Pitch is a verbal query letter. So you're doing verbally what you would be doing in writing if you were doing a critique. They're often called elevator pitches because you do them quickly and you, I guess, imagine yourself pitching your book in the time it takes to get to the 3rd floor and the door's open and you've lost, or hopefully it's so interesting the agent forgets to get off. But that's why, you have to do it quickly. As in a query, hit the highlights. And of course you have to, because you don't have much time. Practice condensing your book into a few lines. If you can't, maybe you're not great at thinking on your feet, like me, or summarizing. I see my whole book at the same time in that I can't, it's hard to just
narrow it.
The main, okay. Or you're afraid of elevators or agents, which is quite possible. But it's possible your plot isn't concise enough. You should be able to, and this is a good way to test this. You should be able to, okay, it's fine to have subplots, red herrings, and multiple characters, but make sure you don't go too far afield in your pitch or in your book. So you should have the main highway of your book. You're going from this point to this point. A woman's having a bipolar episode. She doesn't know if she's killed her neighbor. Meanwhile, the detective on the case is worried that his son is somehow involved because it was his teacher, and he and his son has some stuff in his background. So the detective takes over the case. The woman is trying to prove her innocence before her mania completely kicks in. We're in her head. We're in his head. The detective, I figured he sort of balances her. That is what I would want to say. Okay. Yep. Now, the fact that she has a son and a cheating husband, and I don't want to give away the whole book, but all these other things, they're little side streets to this main highway. And this is true in your writing too. And you can have the friend, she has these issues in her marriage or with her daughter or whatever. And then we have the DA and she's having issues with her job. And all these things they're deviating from the main highway, but you want to tie them in. As long as they tie in before you get so far afield that you've forgotten where the highway is, it's fine. Does that make sense? You
I
want
think
little,
it does. And that's actually a really nice analogy, because that's part of my problem when I'm doing this, is that I want to, this ties into this. So I have to tell you a little bit about this thing because it ties into this, but really it is a side street and I just need to stay on the highway. So
well, if you have just a very limited amount of time, as you do in a pitch, you do. And that's where I fall off. That's where I'm not good, because I do get carried away, but with a tangent. But remember, in your writing too, if you're writing about all these things, you want to tie them back in. I mean, we don't want to be stuck out in left field with the teacher and her problems with her son, even if they're interesting and he's autistic and she's finding help for him, if it doesn't tie into the main plot, or you're going to leave the reader either scattered or out in left field and off of
or frustrated because it didn't tie back together.
Yeah.
And we really do want a nice little package at the end.
Right. But what happened? But what about the murder? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You have to
take us back. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think this has been wonderful. I feel a lot more confident now knowing that other authors struggle with some of these same things I struggle with. Does anybody have any questions as we're continuing?
Yeah, I've had a question. And first, this has been very helpful, Susan. Thank you so much. And thank you, Angie, and all, and for having me here. And I talked to Mike earlier this week, and he said I should probably attend this on a different subject. But I have a question. I have, and again, I'm so confused with the terms these days. I call it self-published 2 books. I utilized another company and they helped me with the art. They put it out on Amazon, sent it to the Library of Congress, 2 other books. And I get contacted about once a week from someone claiming they want me to be their literary agent. I have to write them a check. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're not real. I'm trying to make this real short for you guys. I got an email the other day from someone who said, hey, we represent a literary agent. They're interested in your book. No cost to you. When can they call you? Make a long story short, this lady called me. I had about an hour-long conversation with her. She said she was with Fox Media, and she sent me an email on what she wants me to do. She said she'd represent me. I checked her link out. She's Fox Media, all right. But I have a lot of work from this, and I'm just curious if you all have ever had to do this. She wants me to write a CV, an author CV, which I don't have because I've been in corporate America for 35 years. I have a resume, but it's not what she wants. She wants a PowerPoint pitch to present as well, on top of a video that I have to do of myself. Have you all had to do this before?
I have.
I have. Yeah, Susan has.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to do, well, I thank God never had to do PowerPoint. I mean, I had to practice share screen for about 20 minutes with my daughter last night. That's, but yeah, I've had to do videos and yeah, I was interviewed for several different things. Does this have to do with your writing? Did she find your book?
Yes, they found my book on Amazon.
Okay. I mean, if she seems legitimate, make sure you promote your book, though. Well,
and this is the question I wrote back to her, and she didn't copy me back yesterday. She normally responds pretty quick. But when I was researching a pitch, now I've been in corporate America, I've been in sales, I know what a pitch is, right? But the question when I was researching it was, is the pitch about me and my book, or is the pitch about the book and a marketing plan? Because I'd assume they're the ones who would handle the marketing plan.
If it's a traditional publisher, you don't want to talk about a marketing plan.
Okay.
You might want to say, I have 10,000 contacts, or I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Well, Facebook, not so much anymore. TikTok, whatever these things are that I don't keep up, including my webpage in tatters. But anything you can say like that will let them see that you have
a platform,
contacts, that you're following people that like your book or would read your book. That I would mention. But as far as your plans for marketing, I would let that.
She hasn't responded yet on that. And it was late yesterday that I sent it, so I'm assuming
Well-
she's off on the weekend. But I was just curious when I look at this pitch, I understand it's a pitch to solicit an agent, but now that she said she'd represent me, I was just wondering if you'd ever done a pitch that's going to go to something to decide, make them decide whether they're going to take over the book itself.
Well, here's the thing. We're selling, and Angie, I know you have something to add.
No,
but,
go ahead. Go ahead.
The writer is selling, we're selling our work to an agent. An
Mhm.
agent is selling our work to an editor. If it's
Okay.
Big Five, the editor is then selling your work to her boss or the marketing department.
Got it. So I'm at part 2.
And then the publishers are then selling your book to the reading public. So it's all about selling and money. And, you could have the most beautiful book in the world, and the agent could know it. She could be crying and staying up all night, crying over your book and reading every page and having to go to work on 1 hour of sleep. But if she can't sell it, she's not going to take it.
Right. Okay.
Probably. I don't know. Not all of them are like that. So I would say with you, you don't have to sell yourself to this agent. She's already gotten in touch with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, what do you think, Angie?
Well, I'm a little curious. So have they contacted you about a book that you've already published?
And again, after talking to Mike, I don't know what the difference between independent and self-publishing is anymore. Yes, it's a book that is already published, but it's not published by a major house. It was me paying someone to help me with copy editing, creating art, putting it out on all the sales platforms, filing it with the Library of Congress, et cetera, et cetera.
And they want to republish that under their branding.
Yes.
Okay, so I have limited experience in that because the publisher that I work with has stated, and she works with people who have published independently, but they have stated that they never will republish a book that's already out there, because once it's out there, it's out there. So I don't know how that works. I'm a little surprised that they're doing that, just because I hadn't encountered that. So that's kind of exciting.
I think what have you got to lose?
Yeah, I don't see anything. If
Just
they're not
my- just
asking
my
you
t-
for money,
Right. No
then
money, just
I see
time.
no reason not to jump all over that.
Oh, I'm working on it. I just was kind of like, Mike?
I think that's
And let me-
exciting. And for them to have found you and said, hey, look, this is something that we think we could make big. I mean, I think that's huge.
Well, look, 50.
Listen, what I would make a real quick input on this, Richard's Mike. If it's Fox Media in today's marketplace, what's happening is that because you hold the rights to your book, doesn't matter what, how you want to declare that was published, but if you hold the rights, you're in control of your creation. What Fox Media may be doing, and there are other elements of it, is looking for exploiting the book into other media forms, whether it be possibly a movie right or a TV show kind of thing.
She did mention that, yes.
Yeah, if
That's
it's Fox
exciting.
Media, that's what it could be. They like your book because it has some elements that they're interested in talking to you about. Whether they actually republish your book as a traditionally published book or not, may or may not even be in the equation. They may be looking for it for other purposes.
And one other quick question, Susan, just because you've done it, and I certainly have, I've made many videos of myself doing other things. What do you think, what video did you do of yourself? Just you talking about your book, or what did you do?
Yeah, I was talking about my book.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about my book. Why did I write the book? What my background, that sort of thing. But I think, I'm excited for you. I think this real opportunity. And
And Mike, this is totally separate from what you and I talked about. And just FYI, I am writing another book right now. It's a biography, which is very difficult to write. Fiction is easier to write than biographies. But Mike, I did take your advice and talk to several of those groups, and they are interested. And for the audience that wants to know, because I'm here in Newnan, is I'm writing the biography of Coach Max Bass.
Oh, very good.
So
Yeah, you've got a great topic, Richard, and
yeah.
so yeah, I think that your next book will have a lot of interest from agents who are familiar with the historical element of Coach Bass, because he is still alive and kicking. It's just he's not active in the sports world like he was.
I talked to Paul Donovan yesterday, and he sort of gave me some more pieces to that, all of that. So it was very interesting. I'm sorry to take up everybody's time.
well, and I would say if you do get a lot of things are put on as Netflix, and there's so many different media outlets now, and not all of them were published first.
Right.
Just
that's it. Back to the original, the Fox Media people. That's exactly what she was talking about. Was she did mention taking over my book, but they said they were very interested. She'd read it, which was immediately when she quoted things from it. I said, "Well, you're the first one that's ever talked to me that actually read it." So
yeah, well, they will change. If they're going to do some kind of film, they're going to make it into a screenplay instead of a book. Probably it'll be different.
All right.
But I would say if that happens, then by the time your next book comes out, there's going to be this little flurry of interest in it, because you already will have a following, not only from the first book, but from whatever media did with it. So,
well, I think from a regional standpoint, plenty of people will want to get the next book, being it's about Coach Bass.
oh, that's true too. But
it's a totally different. But yeah,
has Susan? Oh no, it's me. I'm sorry. It's my internet's bad.
So anyway,
well, good luck with it.
thank you so much for advice.
Oh, I didn't give much, but you're very welcome. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Julia, and I have written a book, and I'm self-published, and I was wondering, it is a book about grief and acceptance of grief, and I was wondering how could I get it displayed in a bookstore? And my second question is, how can we get a copy of the information that you presented today?
Okay, good questions. And I think I've seen you somewhere else, but I'm not sure where. A book club, maybe, a book group. I don't know. You look familiar. Anyway, if it's self-published, it's trickier to get into a bookstore. You might go talk to people. Maybe, I don't know. Is everybody in Newnan? Are you in Newnan? You're
Yes, I am in Newnan, and there is a Barnes and Noble bookstore in Newnan.
You can talk to them. If there's some independent bookstores, you have a much better chance. Now, HarperCollins put my books in these places. If I had gone in, they would have been, who are you? But I think it's hard to get an independently published book in Barnes and Nobles.
Julia, can I address this, because I've actually talked to them about this? So yeah. Barnes and Nobles and what's the one in Peachtree City?
Books A Million.
Books A Million. Thank you. So both of them there's a form that you can fill out that gives them your information, and you link to your book, and they will actually do like a review of it. And they do have a local author section in some of these different bookstores that they will incorporate you into. Getting you into the main population of the book, the main real estate of the store is really tough to do as an indie publisher, but that many of them do have a local bookstore. I know Barnes and Noble in Newnan does, and so does Books A Million over in Peachtree City. So there, and if you go to their website, and if you send me an email to the Hometown Novel Nights, I'll try to hook you up with links to those two things, because there are ways to do it. It's not always a guarantee, but at least it puts you out there. And your book, if you've published it, did you publish it through Amazon, or did you publish it through Ingram Spark, or where did you publish through?
It was published through Amazon.
Okay, they do have the ability to sell to libraries and bookstores through Amazon. So you should be able to link to them in that format, so it's accessible. So if somebody comes into Barnes and Nobles and says, I'd like to buy this book on grief, they will order it for you, even if they don't have it in stock. So they will sell the book through Barnes and Nobles, even if it's not in-house in stock. So, but send me a link to the Hometown Novel Nights email, and I will hook you up with those links. Okay.
And think outside the box for, if you're an independent or self-published author, think outside the box of always rushing to the bookstores.
That's what I was going to say, that gift shops.
Right.
Hospitals for a book like that. Hospitals,
yeah.
Libraries.
Nursing homes. I mean, there are and independent bookstores. They will often carry your book. You don't have to be traditionally published. Independent bookstore.
Yeah, exactly. And I would suggest it, like the Corn Arts Gallery in downtown Newnan is not an official bookstore, but it does cater to books by local authors. And it's growing in popularity that way. So yeah, think outside the box. We get hung up into the bookstore mindset of the book signing in the bookstores. Remember this also, if you're going to a bookstore that's independent or Barnes and Noble or any of those, they're going to be sweeping at least 40% off the top of your book cost. And so you might want to think that out. From that side of things.
I wonder if she could do some, Julia, I wonder if you could do something even online, if you could have your book sort of available to different grief sites.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yes.
Support groups. Grief support. You might try that. I would like to see it.
If she brought it by, and I'll just say this because I'm about to lose the signal here below Albany, but if she wanted to bring it by Corner Arts Gallery and tell Jenny for me to look at it, I'll be glad to look at it, give some recommendations. Maybe we could even have it put in there, and then make some suggestions from there. Angie could fill in the blanks there, I'm sure. But yeah, we support a lot. So I'm about to bail out because the signals are fading. So y'all, thank you so much. Susan, I'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As for your other question, what I meant to do was email it out. My talk, you asked me, so I'm happy to, but of course I don't have everybody's email address. So I was going to.
If you send it to us, we'll make sure to send it out to everybody who participated.
You might want to send it out to some of the,
we'll send it to the whole group, everybody who's on our mailing list.
The only reason I found this, I would have given up, but I thought, oh, maybe Angie sent it because I emailed you last night, remember?
Yep. Yeah.
And so I just happened to look there, but otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. We would have found you.
Angie, could you give us your email address again, please?
Yes. So you can send it to Hometown Novel Nights. Let me make sure that doesn't have a night on it. Let's see. Yeah, it's actually it's just Hometown Novel at hotmail.com.
Oh, you guys are still rocking the Hotmail email address.
Well, that's just for the temporary. We're actually setting up, and this is kind of a secret, but we'll let it out just a little bit out of the bag. We're setting up a website for Hometown Novel Nights, so it'll be a little more centralized. So regardless of what social media is doing, we'll have a website that people can go to find events and information. And like this event would be posted there. And so that's going to be coming in January with the new year. We're excited about it. So this Hotmail account won't be active after that point. We'll have a website address that will be novel.
Okay, and Julia and everybody, I have my contact information here. Well, clearly The Pocket Wife and The Other Widow are my two books that are out, but both of the others are ways you can get in touch with me.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer, any questions you might have about publishing or writing, or I actually do classes and one-on-ones and mentoring and all sorts of things. But if you just have a quick question or a long question that you think of after this about finding an agent, just get in touch with me. I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And definitely check out Susan's website. She does have a mailing list that she has out there. I signed up for it today, so I'm looking forward to staying in touch with Susan over the coming next year. And what is your website? You want to share that with us, Susan?
Yeah, it's the first one. It's susancrawfordnovelist.com.
Okay, very good.
I have not been keeping up with it, but you can contact me there. There's a contact page, and there's a little bit about the books. I realized I hadn't been putting up anything I'd been doing for like 2 years. So not that I've been doing much with the pandemic, but I put this up, and I hope to be putting up other things for Hometown Novel Nights. It's a really good group and fun.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being here with us today. This has been wonderful. I feel a lot more confident. I hope everybody else does as well.
I hope so. And remember, this is also subjective. This is just a few ideas, but it is at least in the right order and a couple of different. Would it be helpful to show you one of my query letters? I don't know.
Sure. Why don't you include that in the grouping that you send to us so we can see what you did? I mean, we can talk about it now also.
The one that I just sent out to for the conference in November.
Fantastic.
Okay. And is this going to be recorded? Is this recorded? Or?
Yes, it has been recorded today. Yes.
Okay, great.
And Anthony will do some editing to get out all of our sound effects on the side, and he'll make it beautiful and fantastic, and then he'll share it with us. So we'll post it out on the Hometown Novel Nights Facebook page and it'll be on Carnegie also. So it'll be all sorts of places, but we'll share it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. And it was nice meeting all of you.